think about that, what automatically comes to mind as far as like when I say the art of regress patterns?
Regress and a wrong way to regress. How to take an advanced move and make it simpler and easier to
Okay.
find and digest.
Probably that there are many ways to get to the same.
There are many ways, right? So, just like any workshop that you guys have been attending with either a manager or an instructor of some sort, be open-minded to what the person has to say, but also be open-minded to the fact that what they're saying or what we're saying is not the end-all be-all. There could be a different way that we can go about communicating the information, and a lot of that has to do with communication. All right, so keep it to the basic patterns that we want to think about, such as, let's say we're talking about upper body. What are some basic patterns that we can do, just like dual arms? It's like a push, pull, vertical press, vertical pull, right? So how do you use verbiage to go about doing that? Now, usually come across an issue as far as like doing, for example, like the lat pull down, the seated row, or even like a single arm row, as an example. So a lot of times, especially when I first started in this industry, I had a lot of trouble really communicating that, and it's like, why are they just not getting it? And I started thinking about it, and I realized that it's really not their fault, it's my fault. What did I do wrong? What did I oversee that I should have basically touched upon before I moved forward to the next thing? And I think if you work with Alex enough, you already understand that, you know, that's his big mantra. It's like, if you're not regressing enough, that's your fault. Because if you're progressing any further, then it's not going to be good. So, a big movement pattern that I think should be a big staple for all of our programs is, for example, deadlifts. And the reason why I want to kind of go over deadlifts is because that simple cue of going over a deadlift pattern is going to basically interlace into a lot of movement patterns that are going to, in some way or form, involve the hips. So if I'm looking at a deadlift pattern, what kind of pattern is that? The hinge pattern, right? So if we all kind of observe like the deadlift pattern here, right? When we set ourselves up, having the toes facing forward, and just driving those hips back from that position there, I want you to think about sliding your hands across your thighs and keeping them on your thighs without having to do this little swoop effect over your knee. Okay? So drive those hips back, find your knees, and then come back up. Find your knees, and then come back up. So if you're in a position where when you're trying to find the hamstrings or find the hinging pattern, and you find yourself where you're having to feel like you have to actually move around your knees, that's more of a knee dominant pattern. So to properly execute a proper hinge, you have to drive those hips back far enough to actually access your back. Does that all make sense? Okay. Now, with that said, looking at that movement pattern, you have to start tapping into what I refer to as a counterintuitive approach. Okay? So the end result of a movement pattern could result from your cue. Okay? So if I'm looking at a deadlift and I'm hinging back to find my hips, I want to basically end up with hopefully a vertical shin position. Correct? Hopefully, at least as far as I can go. Because different people's levers are different. So, for example, for Chris's levers and my levers, you have you have much longer limbs than I do. So there's probably going to be some kind of like shifting as far as like cueing is concerned, because you're a lot taller than I am. You're like what, 6'2"? 6'4"? So 6'4", and then 5'8", 5'9", whatever my height is, right? So teeny tiny little guy in comparison. But for him, he might end up having to have a wider stance position because he's a lot taller. Or he might end up with more of a shin pattern because he has longer tibias. Okay? So I'm not going to go into the details on that, because the main emphasis on the hinge pattern is when I'm going into the deadlift position, what am I tempted to do right off the bat? What am I tempted to do? So just start going down. Start squatting. Squatting could be one. Let's say, bend my knees. You start to round out, right? So that is the universal sign of what you're tempted to do. Okay? When I'm going down to a hinging pattern, we're going to be tempted to basically follow through with what the hips are doing. So once again, the hips and the upper body mirror each other. right? So if I'm driving my hips back, my natural temptation is to do this, right? So if I'm going down and I'm doing this, I'm basically curving into it as opposed to resisting what I'm tempted to do, right? So if I start cueing resisting the temptation of slouching forward, that's going to be a key factor. And that's going to carry over into other patterns as we go in, okay? So big cues that I utilize for that, and I like to use kooky cues because it sticks to the person's brain. You got to make it sticky to them so it makes sense to them, regardless of how far outside the box it is. So if I said it's a pair of like one of those little cutie oranges in between my armpits, right? Little cuties underneath my armpits, and I squeeze those as much as I can, that's one layer of a cue. So I got a pair of cuties in between my armpits. Put it down here. A pair of cuties in between my armpits. And I'm also going to think about a second layer. So if I add the cuties in between my armpits, what am I adding to the picture? A little bit of lat action, yeah.
Packing shoulders.
Trying to pack my shoulders to an extent. Mm-hmm. So that's one layer. So I'm adducting my arms towards my body, right? Now, that's one layer. As I'm going out to a deadlift, as I'm doing a hex bar position, that's one portion. But I'm still falling here. So I got to add the second layer of the cue, which is bring your shoulder blades towards your back pocket. So think about that. If I bring my shoulder blades towards my back pocket, what do you guys automatically think about? If you address the shoulder blades towards the back pocket, what do you do? You getting the lats into the picture? Sure. You're getting a lot of the tissue behind the shoulder blades into the picture, which are, what are some tissue that is found behind the shoulder blades? Mid-trapezius, maybe?
Keeping the upper traps out of it.
We want to get the upper traps out of the picture, right? So if I think about that cue, driving the hips back, squeezing the cuties in between my armpits, and then bringing my shoulders towards my back pocket, that's automatically, hopefully, going to get myself into a better position where I'm resisting the temptation of falling forward. Okay? Now, I'm spending a lot of time on that because we all find ourselves in that issue when we're trying to cue our clients. How often do you find yourself cueing a client for a row and you just can't find a way to like get them out of this position? How often do we find ourselves in that? Right? Pretty often. More often than we should. So, spending time on that is one portion. Okay? So as far as regression is concerned, if I look at this setup here, if the person does not have the full-on hip mobility to establish a proper hinge, I can simply lift it up to a position where it's actually set up so that way it's actually more user-friendly for the person. And all I'm tapping into is the discipline of understanding what a proper hinge should be, because a deadlift is broken down into two separate patterns, which is what? Knee dominant pattern, the initial first portion, where I'm actually leg pressing it, right? And then hip dominant pattern at the end. So the initial pull itself is me actually thinking about physically pressing the ground away from me. It's just a vertical set, right? The second portion is the bar is still in a straight line, but I gotta add the joint complex of my hips into the picture on that. That's me driving those hips through. So what you're really tapping into the beginning portion of this whole cueing process is just that hinge, right? So the way you're going to establish the proper height for your client is to find the anterior tibialis, a little protrusion that we find for the FMS, and you're either going to go for the anterior tibialis or slightly below the anterior tibialis, depending on the person's flexibility. The person has pretty good hamstring flexibility, they scored well on the FMS, sweet, you could probably go to about here. Right now we're going to the discipline of the actual deadlift, so let's actually take off one of the risers here. So if I take this setup, now I'm in a position where I'm going to establish a good hinge without getting too far into the actual knee pattern. So I'm really just capitalizing on the first phase or the ending phase of the deadlift, right? So I'm in position. I'm going to think about the cues that I just talked about, which is drive the hips back, keep my hands on my thighs as I'm going through. So right around here, that's the end of my hip pattern. So at that point in time, what do I got to do to reach further? I got to bend the knees, right? So I just simply bend the knees, while I still maintain the driving of my hips simultaneously. Okay? Now, automatically from this position here, I'm going to be tempted to do what? Probably slouch forward, right? So literally, right on the back, if I didn't have any kind of a load, I need to establish where I need to do, which is find that base right off the back. So right from the top, just squeeze a pair of oranges into my armpits. I want some orange juice. I'm going to find my back pocket as I drive my hips back simultaneously. Lift my chin towards my spine. Now from here, I'm going to grab onto the bar, get some good engagement. And how do I get some good engagement on my last one here, guys?
Snap the bar in half.
Snap the bar in half. That's it right there. Snap the bar in half. So when you think snap the bar in half, show me what you will do. Boom. You gotta break it, right? So the beauty of that is when you snap the bar in half, you're tapping into not just this complex, but this is the end result. I want that shoulder to be nice and tacked and engaged. And the way that we're gonna be able to kind of reference that is if I look at my little indentation in my elbow here, right? If this is facing to the inside, am I snapping the bar? No. I want to pivot this so that way this is nice and facing forward in that direction. When I do that, I'm packing my shoulder. Okay? So now we're adding the layer of squeezing the oranges. And by the way, when you do snap the bar, that does accentuate the squeezing of the oranges. So the squeezing of the oranges at the very top of the deadlift is there by design, because it's only going to capitalize more when you do decide to break the bar. Make sense so far? So once I'm here, I'm snapping the bar. Where should the bar be at? As far as my shoes is concerned. Where should the bar be sitting above? Where should the bar be setting over? So that's about the level, right? But where is the bar going to be sitting over or above? Midfoot. Okay. The cue for that is going to be cover the shoelaces. So you see how I'm simplifying everything? Cover the shoelaces. If I cover the shoelaces, look at this. Look at this real close, guys. If the bar is here, am I cover the shoelaces? No. It's too far. But if I cover the shoelaces with the bar, oh, I'm fairly close to the bar, and when I drive my hips back, all of a sudden, my shins are nice and well endowed in good distance from the bar. You know? So they're tied in. Nice and set up. You see people that do really good deadlifts, they have little scars here because the bar literally actually rubs them against their shins. Not that I'm saying like tear your client's shins apart, but as far as a good deadlift is concerned, you want to hide the shoelaces because you want to keep the bar as close to your midline or your center of mass as you can when you're actually lifting the weight. Okay? Yes. I'm not going to be going over full-on deadlifts today. I can go over that in the future.
Okay. I'm just curious about the setup for the shoes.
For the hex bar? We'll go into that here in a little bit if we have time. Does that all make sense? So I'm not going to go any further into the deadlift other than just when you come through, hide the shoelaces, squeeze a pair of oranges, back pocket with the shoulders as soon as I drive back, grip the handles, break the handles, accentuate the back pocket position, squeeze the oranges. There is no such thing as over-exaggeration when it comes to this part. Accentuate the heck out of it, right? From here, I'm going to leg press the ground away from me and drive my hips through as soon as I can. Or better yet, as soon as I clear my knees. As soon as I clear my knees, that's where the hips come through. Back, as soon as I clear the knees, hips come through. Boom, coming through. From that position there, shoulder blades are pulled back. And as I bring the weight down, which is usually where the pain usually starts in the lower back, because of this. If their lower back is hurting, it could be potentially because they're caving forward, because they're not capitalizing on setting the pillars that they should have to have a proper position to work on. Cool? Any questions on that? Makes sense, right? So that's taking the regressive approach for the deadlift. It's actually just basically breaking down the deadlift into how you should actually think about it, as opposed to just load up the hex bar or load up the straight bar and just lifting the weight. the idea is to how to capitalize on having the person fully understand how to actually perform the movement pattern, the why, before the what. Okay? So that's going to help out with the row in a little bit. So keep all those notes in mind because they're going to carry over into the row. So let's sneak on over to a vertical pull here. What is the issue that we tend to see with a vertical pull? Like, what do we, sitting back? Do we have trouble with this? Like having them understand the depressing of the shoulders? That's a tough one, right? So once again, we're taking it a whole bunch of steps back without even actually touching this just yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you come on over here real quick. He's gonna be my partner in crime, and I want you to actually have a partner here in a second after I show you this. The idea is, if I wanna have him understand the counterintuitiveness of it, watch out on the lay there, guys. The counterintuitiveness of the lat pull down. So the lat pull down is you're usually going to start up here. You're going to pull from that position there. Correct? So I'm going to start in with the elbows here. And the counterintuitiveness on it is that I'm going to just push the elbows up. You see how his traps come up from that position there? I'm going to teach him to basically depress those shoulders down. So push my hands down with the elbows. Good. Relax. So from here, I'm going to correct another thing. Eyes forward, tuck your chin in a little bit. And I want to pull this back as much as I can so that I can create either the triple chin position or the neutral cervical spine. So either triple chin or tuck your chin in towards the spine. So obviously in a good alignment, right? So more often than not, we're going to see a lot of this in this industry. So the more I start to basically teach him how to actually work against that, the better movement patterns he's going to start to get over time. So literally what I'm doing is I'm going to have him take a breath in, relax, and then exhale as he presses down. Press it down, good. Relax, and then press it down. So what am I teaching with this here?
Press his shoulder blades.
Exactly, I'm teaching how to depress the shoulder blades or the scapula, or how to actually engage the shoulder before he pulls down. Because when it comes to the lat pull down, I'm actually very specific about the way I want my people to do it. And the main things is if I have my person sit here and they just sit down and they have this going on for them, look at my shoulders, is it a good position to work off of? Is it a good position to work off of? Probably not, right? So literally, after I work on dissecting that situation with them or the pattern for them, then I can progress into this. So I'm going to have them basically grab onto the handle, and I'm going to have him depress those shoulders down before he even sits down. So depress those shoulders down, he's going to sit down, right? And from there, he's going to pull. Now, with the lat pull down, also understand that there should be a degree difference with the pull. So I should not be pulling from here. I should be pulling from about here. This is the natural angle for the shoulder blade to be tracking down, because when you're pulling down the weight, you should be thinking about the structure, the architecture working with the muscle, right? Because the muscle is only going to be able to work as efficient as the structure moves, okay? So as an example, if I take somebody, one of my ladies, I'll have you come over here, Holly. So I'm just going to lower the weight, not because I'm fearing of your strength here, right? But what I want you to do here is I want you to just grab onto the handles for me. And what I want you to do, Kali, and this is where the beauty of the deadlift cue that we just went into starts to basically layer into these other patterns. She's going to grab onto the bar and break the bar. So watch what happens to her elbows when she breaks the bar. You see how they come in a little bit? That's perfect. That's exactly where I want it to be, because that little degree difference right there is going to work very well with the way her shoulder blades track down. As opposed to if she tries to pull from here, she's just pulling on just the muscle on a scapula that is not tracking down as she's pulling. So when she's in this upper position, she's going to have her shoulder blades upward like so. As she starts to pull, the shoulders are going to start to track downward as so. So she should have a downward rotation of the scapula as she's pulling down. So from here, Colin, let's have you first and foremost break the bar, depress those shoulders, sit yourself down. Keep that position there. Keep your chin towards your spine. And then from here, what I want you to focus on is close off the rib cage without holding your breath. Does that make sense? So when she closes off her rib cage, what she's doing is she's creating a nice pelvic tilt to the inside and to your pelvic tilt. So she has an overarch, as an example, this is a way for me to kind of start more or less kind of like remolding or correcting that to an extent, right? So from here, Kylie's gonna keep herself facing forward here. I'm gonna use the verbiage of peeking through the window. So peeking through the window means that when she starts, relax for a second. When she starts, she's gonna actually be sitting forward a little bit. That's her starting point. As she pulls back, she's gonna slightly lean back just a smidge and then pull from the elbows down. As she clears her face, right? The money maker. Face. All right, goes forward, just forward. All right, and she's gonna pull and then slightly lean back as she clears that area. So as far as the ending of the pattern is concerned, it should be right below her chin. Right below the chin, right at the clavicle area, because that, for most people, is the ending of the range of motion of the scapula, right? So as soon as their scapular range of motion has completed, that is the end of the movement pattern. Okay, come on up for a second. And what I mean by that is more often than not, when we pull, and we continue to pull because we think we can, because other joints are out also getting involved, we pull further. How often do we see something like this? Pulling down, and then we're going here. So this here, if you look at my shoulder for a second, you see as I'm pulling down and I'm pulling below my clavicle, I start going into anterior rotation of the shoulder. I don't need that, right? So if I pull, peeking through the window from here, so here, this is not a good position to pull from, as far as what I just talked about, right? But as I sit back, the elbow positions itself where it should be, which is slightly in front of my body or towards my midline, right? Pause at my below my chin or clavicle. That's the end of the range of motion coming through. As I peek through, I'm basically mirroring. The reason why I'm using the verbiage of peeking through the window is because this also will layer into another movement pattern later on, which would be what?
Overhead press.
Overhead press. So an overhead press, you should be able to establish a hiding the face position, meaning that the biceps should be at the level of the ear, right? So if I'm doing a lat pull down, this is my overhead press or lat pull down position. Chin towards the spine, closing off the rib cage, pulling right below the chin, holding the depression for a split second, coming through. That's also going to mirror into a press later on. And what I'm capitalizing on is she's not letting her rib cage, or he's not letting his rib cage open up as he's going through the motions. Because as I'm going through this resistant movement pattern, I'm also remolding the person to the way they should be functioning. Okay? Now, we do teach to breathe from your diaphragm. Okay? This is relating to resistance training, not breathing, right? So for the lat pull down, some people would say, well, let the ribcage open up a little bit because that's the natural position to be in. But I'm also loading or trying to basically remodel the person to the way they should be functioning. So those 12 seconds or so of closing off the ribcage are not going to hurt the person. Does that make sense? Questions on that?
I had a question about the ear position. When you said tuck your chin in, did you cue ears over the shoulders?
Yeah. That's exactly it. So that's a great cue right there. So, like I said, if you come up with something like that, we're like, well, what about a different piece of verbiage? What about putting the ears over the shoulders? That's a perfect cue. If this doesn't make sense, triple chin position or tuck your chin in and pull it towards your spine, then put your ears at your shoulder level. They know, oh, so my ears are right here. They know exactly where they're at. What if I put them over my shoulders? Perfect. Okay? Cool? Let's take this over to take a full circle for a single arm row. Right? So if you sneak on over here real quick. So let's say we take a full circle. How does that all connect into the cueing process? If I'm doing a single arm row, I can do it in multiple ways. Okay? What are some ways that I can do a single arm row? Bends over. Such as, show me. Just like that. Mm-hmm. So that would be kind of like a quote-unquote advanced position if you don't have a touch line, right? So if you're doing a row position from here, is that advanced or is that in between? It's pretty advanced, right? Because there's a lot of things involved now because I'm using a lot of core there. But what I can do is I can start introducing what I want that to be as part of their programming. which would be, let's say, sitting down and having a touch point. So if I'm touching, and if I'm having a touch point involved, you can use a bench. Absolutely. So the beauty of this is I'm going to establish a single arm row, but I'm going to position them in a position in which they are going to establish a hinge pattern, because this should be a hinge pattern. Okay? So how different is this to this?
You're more stable when you have your leg back.
What's that?
I guess you're more stable in this one. Center of gravity, right?
No, so what I'm saying is, like, when I do a deadlift pattern, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Yeah, you're just taking one leg out of the picture.
I'm just taking one leg out of the picture, right? So the idea with that is if I set my foot here, right, I want to position myself where I'm not in a knee dominant position, which would be where? Huh?
Putting pressure on the back.
On the back knee?
Yeah.
Or sitting forward like this? So if I'm forward like this, there's a lot of knee dominance going on here. If I feel my quad, that's letting me know that I'm using more knee dominance than I should, okay? So what I want to do is I want to establish a proper hinge position, and I want to drive that hip back as far as I can. If I feel my hamstring and glute from this position here, I'm golden, baby. Make sense? So, this is where the full circle kind of plays a part now. I'm going to be loading this side, okay? So if I'm loading this side, I need to capitalize on a proper hinge position. Where were the cues for the deadlift?
Orange juice.
Orange juice, what does that mean? What do I put in here? Put a towel or like the imaginary concept here. If I'm going to be in that bend over position, what am I going to think about? What is the verbiage point that I gave you guys? How do I do this?
Put it in your back pocket.
Bring that shoulder towards my back pocket. So if I'm here, I'm going to establish a nice locked in position. Keep that shoulder towards my back pocket, and then from there I'm going to pull. Okay? Now, a couple points on that. We already talked about the hip. Find that hip into that deadlift pattern. That's one portion. Portion two, my posted hand, what I don't want to see is this. See that? What should I do to counteract that temptation?
Sit back a little bit further. You should be able to knock the hand off, right?
I want you to think about this. Push. Push into the box. So if I push into the box, because right now, if my shoulder is sticking out like that, that means I have no support system to work off of. If I push into the box, now I'm making that shoulder blade hug the rib cage. Working on my serratus anterior. So to an extent, I'm still working on core. I'm still working on shoulder corrections. Right? Interesting. So thinking about that. So I like to once again think about counteracting the temptation of what I'm going to try to do. So counterintuitive. If I naturally want to do this, cave in, I'm going to push into the box, and I'm going to establish a nice hinge here. So now I feel good stability here. Now I'm in a good position to lift the weight. Now when I lift the weight, I'm going to bend that back knee, get myself in that established shoulder blades through my back pocket position, and then from there I'll pull. So from here, locked in, pull from the elbow towards the shoulder blade. So as I pull through the elbow, hug the orange in between my armpit, and I can even add an extra cue to that as I'm pulling. What's that?
A soft arc.
A soft arc?
Yeah, like with the elbow, soft arc with it.
If I add a soft arc, yeah, that could add something to it. Okay. Break the bar. If I break the bar, what am I doing?
Engaging the lats.
Engaging my lats a little bit. Well, technically, I'm fighting against my lat, just so you know. If I break the bar, the action of my lat is to create internal rotation and extension. That's the action of the lat. If I break the bar, I'm fighting against that natural tension that the lat wants to create. So counterintuitiveness again, right? So if I go against the tension of the lat, that natural tensegrity that I'm creating at the lat complex with my humerus is going to, in a sense, allow me to establish a better support. So counterintuitive, right? So if I'm set up here, shoulders packed, back pocket, soft knee back here. Just so you know, this is here for moral support. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the weight of my front heel. Okay? Locked in, pull towards my shoulder, towards my back pocket. Keep that position. And as I pull, I'm gonna think about the end result being my shoulder blade. So hop on over here. Go into all the cues that we just went into right now. All right. So set the hand down, bring that foot forward a little bit. I want muscle weight to be shifted here, you can hit back. Got it? Soften this knee for me. Bring it back a little more. Shimmy it a little bit of that. Get yourself down fairly low with the hip here. There you go. Shift that weight back just a smidge. Do you feel this side? Yeah. You should feel the glute from that position. That's where I want it. Now when you pull, push into the shoulder. When you pull through the shoulder, the elbow towards the shoulder blade. So pull, pull. And then I'm going to basically cue the shoulder blade retraction push back down. As he comes up, I want him to kind of kinesthetically feel where I want that shoulder blade to go. So pull. Good. Move the shoulder blade back down. Keep the shoulder open up a little bit. Open the chest a little bit. Open the chest a little bit. Without rotating. Open the chest, back pocket. And then pull to the shoulder. So as he pulls, shoulder blade retraction. Back down. Keep that integrity here. Pull. Right towards the back. Okay. Relax. So that's the regress portion. Now, I want to get him to a point where I can sneak in some deadlifts without him realizing. Right? So that's the thing, is you got to be somewhat sneaky in your own respective way when you're working with your clients. So if I'm set up here, as an example, and I'm going to have you guys kind of break off into groups and try these out here in a second, okay? So if I set him up here, where I create the touch point now being my thigh, now I'm really getting a little bit more serious, because now I'm using my own architecture as a reference point as support. So to an extent, that makes it more challenging, because now there's more thinking involved. Here, there's an outside source. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to position himself into a setup where he literally establishes the same setup. But now, because he's actually touching his own architecture, his own thigh, right? Now he has to establish a true proper deadlift position. Once again, think about this. If I'm here, that's the beginning and ending of my deadlift, and I transfer into a single leg, how different is that?
Wouldn't that be more stable than putting your hand on bench because you're closer to your center of mass?
To an extent, yes, but it's also challenging. Here's the reason why. If I do a touch point here, how much more of a distance do I have from my thigh? Here.
Further.
It's a little bit more. It's a little bit further, right? Yeah. So in deadlift, a true deadlift, you should see the angle of femur to torso decrease. So I should create a nice solid V off of this setup. Right? I should be fairly close towards my torso when I'm in deadlift position. Here, I'm actually pushing myself away from that position. So to an extent, it looks like that's easier, but it's much more challenging because for one, you're closer to the ground. This angle is much more decreased, and you have no option but to use your core more in that pattern. How do you try it out here in a second so you can test that? So the idea with this is if I set myself up, I'm going to use, so let's all get ourselves into that position without actually lifting any weight here. Let's position yourself there. So if I use my thigh here as my point of contact, right? I got to play around with this. So play around with this. Set the elbow on the mid portion of your thigh and put as much weight as you can. So push into that thigh. And what happens when you push into that thigh? You should feel like that shoulder's packing itself in the right position, right? Now, merge forward weighted towards your toes, and what do you feel come into the picture? Maybe quad, right? Quad knee. Should you be feeling that?
No.
No. I want to push back and up to basically have most of my weight, most of it, meaning not all of it, from here back. And when I do that, I should feel a different situation. You guys feel all that area there? So from here, I'm going to capitalize on the biggest cues here, which are what? Push into the thigh and keep your shoulder blades towards your back pocket. Because you're going to be here otherwise, right? So push the shoulder blades into your back pocket, and what that does is, in the result, is you can see your chest, right? So do you notice that your chest opens up from this? Yeah. Okay. Come on up. The reason why I'm bringing that up, you notice that your chest opens up. More often than not, I hear people say this. They go, open your chest. Open your chest. I even did that with you over here. I said, open your chest, right? A lot of times our clients are not going to know what this means. We know because we're in touch with our bodies, but a lot of times our people may not know that. So I got to be counterintuitive. The end result is an open chest. The cue is bring the shoulder towards your back pocket. Same end result, different cue. Easier to understand. At least I think it is. Yeah?
A lot of the time with I usually use open chest, but then I see a lot of like instantly back
Yes.
from the spine.
Yes. A lot of this, right?
Yeah.
So if I say open my chest, I may lead with my belly. But if I say close off your rib cage, raise, and then bring your shoulders towards your back pocket, for some reason that just touches base a little bit better with the way they're understanding it. I don't know. That's just my own personal experience from being in the field for multiple years, and it's just interesting to kind of notice that. So when you use that rowing pattern, that's basically what you're really capitalizing on. Okay, you're getting a lot more core out of the picture. You're really dialed in. You're tapping into multiple cues. So what are some cues that we've gone through already that we've gone through this?
Active. Bring the shoulder blade to the back pocket.
Shoulders to the back pocket. That's one.
Squeeze the orange in your armpit.
Which armpit?
Right.
Your right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Push away from your knee with your left arm.
So push through my thigh.
Push through your thigh.
Lock that in.
Your weight, the majority of your weight back on the back third of your foot.
The front foot or back foot? Front foot or back foot?
Front foot, back third of that.
The back foot is just
What about
for
the
moral support.
There it is. Yeah, the back foot is for moral support. It's like the tail on a cheetah, right? The cheetah has this really long tail. Why is that? Counterbalance, because it's moving around at 70, 75 miles an hour across the terrain, and while it's swerving around, that tail is moving everywhere, and it's counterbalancing that zigzagging shifting pattern. So literally, visualize yourself as a cheetah. So those kooky things, like think of your back leg as just like the cheetah's tail. Cool. All right. Questions on that? Do you guys want to play around with this, or you guys want me to continue going into more regressions?
We have
More regressions? More info? Cool. Yeah.
Because you were saying like break the bar, kind of keep the tension safety. When you're pulling up, are you like rotating?
Yes. Yes. Great question. So when you're pulling and breaking the bar simultaneously. Okay? So we're gonna grab a partner real quick. Grab a partner real quick. And I'll show you here with my man Big Game James. So what you're gonna do with your partner here is I want you to have your partner set one hand on the shoulder here and the other hand on the actual shoulder blade. So find the inner edge of the shoulder blade, the scapula. Okay? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to think about packing the shoulder back for a second. Tall and tight. You're tall and tight. Bring the shoulder, pack the shoulder down, right? So if we've established this position, how much different is that, right?
Yes.
So if they're not getting it, pause for a second, bring that elbow down. So bring that elbow down. Just pretend that I don't get it, right? So he's gonna keep this one hand here. He's gonna put the other hand on the elbow right below it. He's gonna push it up. Okay, so you see what I just did? You're gonna tell me. You see what I just did?
See what I just did.
Cool. Now fight that.
I want you to fight that. Push your elbow into the hand.
Push the elbow into the hand. So that should really connect with the person. Because I'm forcing the person into a position where they should not be, what they're going to be tempted to do.
Right.
This is what I don't want you to do. Push into my hand, end result is a packed shoulder. Ooh, interesting, right? So that's where I want you to be. That's your starting point. Now reach. So I'm gonna extend the arm again, right? From here, I'm gonna keep that engaged position that I just capitalized on. And as you pull, I want you to keep that elbow close to your body and slightly bring that thumb out as you pull. But I want you to think about pulling from your shoulder base. So he's literally, physically keeping my shoulder in check. And what I mean by that is I'm gonna wanna do this. You see that? I'm gonna wanna do this. So he's gonna keep me in check, and he's gonna pull and help me retract that shoulder back. So that way I have a full kinesthetic understanding of what's expected from me, right? You don't have to do this with every client, but if you spend time doing this, you won't have to waste time explaining things later on. So literally, you're breaking down the why or the question they're going to be asking in the future by layering a crap load of value and a crap load of understanding of what they should be doing or feeling or accomplishing. Make sense?
And they need you there versus just saying.
Yeah. So what that's doing, guys, just so you know, what that's doing is it's allowing your client to have the opportunity to understand that there's more to the pattern that meets the eye. And if they're not getting it, that's good, because that shows more value for you, because now they know what you're looking at. You're creating that third person view. Because when you go from what I just did now to sitting back and saying, pack your shoulder, squeeze that orange, keep that shoulder towards the back pocket, he's gonna start to do that on his own, right? I'm gonna let him play around with it. I'm gonna let him fail a little bit, and if he continues to fail, I'll just come back in again and then reestablish that cueing point again to reestablish what I want, right? So it's like a dance, back and forth. I want to go over the bench press, because the bench press is often overseen as far as like how do you capitalize on properly cueing. So let's sneak on over here real quick. Information here. Hopefully I'm not going too fast. Hopefully I'm not making it sound like it's too regressed, but I mean that's the point of it, regressions, right? So for the chest press, what I want you to really wrap your mind around is, once again, the end result of what we're trying to work on. So when we're doing the chest press, what are we trying to build? Chest. The pectorals, right? So I want you to think about this. More often than not, let's go ahead and hop on over here, guys, so that we're not in like the wave. What I want you to think about for this portion here is, what is the action of the chest? And what are we always doing when we're doing the chest press, if you do the chest press? When we do the chest press, we think about what when we're doing the movement?
Protracting the scapulars.
Protracting the scapulus. Okay.
Adduction. Adduction of the chest.
Adduction of the chest. Well, that's what most people don't think about. Most of us think about just pressing. We coach. Okay, press the weight. The pressing is the end result. The weight raising off your chest is the end result. It's thinking about, once again, the cues that are going to implement proper engagement in the actual contractions that should be taking place as you're coming through. So if you guys put your hands together like this real quick, and I want you to squeeze them as hard as you can, what do you feel come into the picture? Your chest, right? Now, if you take the same exercise and squeeze to your thumbs as hard as you can, what do you notice coming to the picture? Upper here. Ah, there it is. You still get chest, but you might feel some of this, right? Now take the same exercise and create tension towards your pinky end. What do you feel now? Chest. Do you still feel the delt? Hopefully not as much or not at all. Perfect. Just that little portion right there should be like a light bulb moment as far as like, where is this going, right? And the beauty of that is we're going to take that from the most regressed to the most progressed, if you want to call it that. So what I want to capitalize on the chest press is I'm going to set my client in between the grid by design. Okay. So if I look at the grid, there's a straight line here. I'm going to get in your space here. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to position myself in between the grid because I'm going to use an imaginary tactic with my client. The tactic is going to be shrink the line. All right? Shrink the line. I want you to shrink the line. Okay? So we're going to take all those cues that we went into for the deadlift, or most of them, and apply them into a push-up. See how this is all layering together? Regressed, progress, without even realizing it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to sit myself between the grid. I'm going to use my fingertips to grip the ground. Because when I'm gripping the ground, I'm also capitalizing on engaging the shoulder from that position. Okay? Prime example. So here. If I have my girl Polly's hand here, if I just have it relaxed here, chilling, not doing anything, right? This is not a very stable joint, right? But if I have her grip my thumb as hard as she can, squeeze it, squeeze it, squeeze it, squeeze it, oh my goodness, what just happened there? There's stability, right? So if I want to create a proper pressing pattern, first and foremost, I gotta stabilize that area. Otherwise I'm gonna find myself in trouble, right? So that's the point on that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grip the ground, I'm gonna create a corkscrew setup into the ground, which is basically the same thing as breaking the bar. I just have my hands open this time around. So, set my hands. My hands are going to be basically at my shoulder level, or maybe slightly out, depending on the person. Okay. I'm going to create a corkscrew setup, and I'm going to push into my palms, push the ground away, so that way my shoulder blades are packed up against my ribcage. I'm capitalizing on stabilizing that. Let's have you guys put a pair of 25 on there real quick.
I have a question.
Sure.
With, like, I know a lot of women have, like, carrier knives. I know that, like hip extension. For something like that, do you say wider arms, or do you say bend, slightly bent?
Slightly bent. So her question was, what if you ask me that's double jointed, that has the ability to extend their elbows past their point, right? So do you want to continue to explore that? The person's double jointed? Probably not, right? Right? Like, then again, like, that's their own structure, but you shouldn't explore it because that's a bad position, right? So I want to get her to finishing with soft elbows. So good point on that is when you're actually loading the person, like on a chest press as an example, I want you to finish with a soft elbow position. If you fully lock out, the lockout is adding a lot of stress on the actual joint. I want the stress on the tissue. Make sense?
That's what I normally do, but I do.
Cool. So when I'm in the push-up position, I'm going to grip the ground, create a corkscrew setup, push the shoulder blades in towards my back pocket and my rib cage as well. I'm going to tuck my chin in, create that triple chin position, right? Extend, and here it doesn't stop. I'm actually clenching my quads and my glutes into the same picture, clenching them in, okay? So from that position, when I'm clenching as much as I can, what am I doing, guys?
Creating full body tension.
Creating full body tension. I'm stabilizing my pelvis, hopefully, so I'm not here. I don't want to be here. Clench, engage my core, so I'm one unit as I'm going through this pressing pattern. Now when I go down towards the ground, I'm going to decelerate slowly, creating an arrow with my elbows. And then I'm going to think about shrinking the line as I press. So what I mean by creating an arrow with my elbows is this. If I'm coming down to the push-up, I want to make sure that I'm decelerating and then those elbows create a nice little arrow position, meaning the top of the arrow is my head. And what that's going to do is it positions me to actually capitalize on the shoulder blade action and my shoulder joint action working as a unison. Scapular femoral rhythm is what I'm trying to tap into. So the best position that I want to be in is here, because that allows me to capitalize on how my structure should be functioning in the movement pattern. Make sense? So the beginning of it is a back exercise, if you want to call it that, right? Because I'm decelerating down. The ending of it is me shrinking the ground, adding the chest into the picture, okay? So I'm going to get a breath in, quads and glutes are in the picture, grip the ground, decelerate, create an arrow with the elbows, and as I press, I have my eyes on the middle of the line there, I'm going to shrink that line as I press through. Get a breath in as I come down, and shrink that line as I press through. So when I shrink the line, I should be feeling a lot more chest. Let's give that a try real quick. Find a piece of grid. Find a piece of grid here. Going through all the cues. Wide finger, open up your fingertips. Okay. Grip the ground with your fingertips as much as you can. Tuck your chin in towards your spine, or create a triple chin position. Push into the ground for a split second to let the shoulder base hug the rib cage. From here, decelerate yourself towards the ground, creating an arrow with the elbows, and then shrink the line as you press, as you exhale. Okay? Repeat that 5 times. Okay? Decelerate and then shrink the line as you press. Breath in on the way down, exhale as you come up. Quads and glutes are in the picture the whole time. Shrink the line as you press. Yes. So you're literally doing this action. You're shrinking the line as you're pressing. That's what you're doing. It's the same thing that we started out with, which is squeezing your hands together. So you're priming the interaction by adding this little dynamic before you even start into the pressing movement pattern. Because the person needs to understand, why are you saying shrinking the line? Why am I shrinking the line? This is stupid, right? So if you felt your chest come into the picture by pressing your hands together, now there's validity behind this cue, right? Social proof behind the cue. Interesting, huh? So that's the regress state, but you can make a push-up really challenging just by doing that. Was that an easier or hard push-up? With all the thinking that you had to involve in, right? So the beauty of that is you are incorporating a little bit of thinking into the execution. So if your person comes in and they're stressed out because of work, now they're gonna forget about that because they're thinking about this right now. Keep them in the moment. Appreciate the moment. Leverage yourself with the moment. Okay? Moving over to the bench press here. Now that hopefully I've established a different mind frame behind the push-up, do you guys think that the bench press will stay the same as far as how you've been cueing it? You think maybe we'll add some nuggets to that? Hopefully, right? So first and foremost, a good rule of thumb to think about is 1/2 inch to 1 inch from the chest. 1/2 inch to 1 inch from the chest. Why do you guys think I'm saying that?
So you stay fully engaged.
So you stay fully engaged.
A lot of pressure on your shoulders.
So you're not bouncing off. Okay.
Put a lot of pressure on your shoulders.
Overextending the rotator.
Yes. Yes. So if I go past that 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and once again, that could change per person. They could actually touch their chest because it's big enough that they don't have to respect that 1/2 inch to 1 inch distance, right? So if I look at the setup here, if I'm in a pressing pattern and I think about my shoulder blade tracking back as I come through, that should be about the ending portion of my shoulder blade. That makes sense? I'm also respecting the natural angle for my pressing pattern, which is what?
Your elbows.
The elbows. And what was the cue that I used earlier?
Arrow.
Create an arrow. So I want to create an arrow with my elbows when I'm actually doing a pressing pattern. Not here. If I'm here, that pressing pattern is turning into mostly this joint, right? Here, I can get myself set up here, and here I can actually create extension. As opposed to here, I'm restricted because the weight's up here. My trap's in the way. I want to depress those patterns. So the 1/2 inch situation is where the end of the shoulder blade stops. This is the end range of motion in most cases. Okay? Now, when I actually press the weight, what do you guys think I'm doing? Shrinking the bar. So I'm adding that cue, shrinking the bar. Okay? I want you to shrink the line when you press. As you press, I want you to shrink the bar when you press. So I'm pressing and I'm thinking about shrinking it as much as I can. Shrinking it as much as I can. Let's try that without even any weight here. Let's try that out. If you got like a PVC pipe or something, and then squeeze that pipe as you're coming through, right? If you're squeezing through, you should feel that come into the picture, right? And if you're squeezing through and also breaking the bar, you're adding the external rotators into the pattern because you're external rotation, right? Once again, you're being counterintuitive because you're fighting the lat on the bench press. What is the action of the lat? And right? So if I'm holding the bar isometrically, and I'm breaking the bar from that position, and I'm driving my shoulder base towards the bench here, right? Back pocket again, it came out again, right? Towards the bench press. I'm actually keeping those shoulder blades retracted the whole time on the bench press, right? But if I'm driving that in, I'm breaking the bar, I'm actually counteracting the natural action that the lat is responsible for. Therefore, I'm battling natural tension that I'm creating with my body, or with my lat up against my heel ribs. And what that does, it creates tensegrity as far as engaging the trunk, or engaging that posterior chain into the bench press. So the bench press does involve a little bit of posterior chain. Here's why. What I just said in the actual pressing pattern. So when I'm here, have a nice stable surface, I'm going to drive my heels into the ground. If I drive my heels into the ground, what am I doing? Creating tension on the back end. Now, where most of us mess up and we lose a lot of power or energy is what? When we're pressing. Let the hips come out the bench. So you're driving the heels in. The natural temptation of driving your heels into the bench is to do the hip thrust, right? So you're going to counteract the temptation by driving your hips into the bench. And what you're doing with that, it's pretty interesting. You're creating a lot of tension with the glutes up against the bench. You've got the bar loaded here. You're breaking the bar, and then you're also simultaneously driving the back, the shoulder base towards the bench itself, right? So I'm creating a natural arch between the top of my glutes and my T-spine, right? And what I refer to that as is the recoil effect as you're coming through. Because literally what you're doing with that, what you're doing with that is when he gets himself set up, let's say he uses his thumbs as his reference point for the bar setup here. Just go ahead and pop it up. If he's driving the heels into the ground, go ahead and pop it up. He's driving the heels into the ground, a lot of tension up against the bench, a lot of tension from here, and he's really capitalizing. So really open that chest from that position up, but keep the tension here. There's a natural arch taking place here, okay? Imagine two springs on each end creating tension. That spring effect is going to assist him to some extent in stabilizing himself and being able to basically, with that stability that he's creating with these two portions touching the bench, he's able to really capitalize on this setup here and be fully supported from that setup. And at the same time, have better leverage as he's about to press. So what he's going to do is he's going to think about breaking the bar, create an arrow as he decelerates down, a half an inch from the chest, that's your stopping point, and then shrink the bar as you press. Good. Decelerate slowly, and then shrink the bar as you press. Good. I'm going to give him a visual cue. Bring it down, and then shrink the bar as you press. I want you to create a triangle as you press. Bring it on down. Good. And shrink the bar as you press. There you go. Perfect. Bring it back. So hopefully, with a bench press, he's able to capitalize on more than just this. If I'm doing my job as far as explaining how we should be approaching the bench press. Did that make a difference as far as like what you're accustomed to using for the bench press?
That felt a lot harder than when I load up more weight on it.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So one thing you're also adding with all these extra cues is you're adding a lot of extra stress that they're not accustomed to. It's like, I'm not going to talk too much trash against CrossFit, but CrossFit in their kip-ups. You can do 100 kip-ups, cool. Can you do a full pull-up? How many of those can you do? If there's a big deviation or contrast in how many pull-ups they can do in comparison to kip-ups, there's a reason. Because they're like a floppy fish, using momentum to go up. Here,
you're using a lot of your own natural tension. Once again, tensegrity being utilized within your benefit and understanding how to capitalize on it. That's the key. If you're just tensing up and hoping for the best, there's no end result. Make sense? Helpful, guys?
Yes.